My name is Ayana, and I'm 32 years old. I still remember the smell of sweet vanilla and freshly baked bread wafting through my childhood home. My grandmother, a talented baker, would spend hours in the kitchen, teaching me the secrets of traditional recipes. Those early memories sparked a passion within me, and I knew I wanted to share that same joy with others. After years of working in various bakeries and perfecting my craft, I finally decided to take the leap and open my own bakery. It wasn't easy, of course. There were long hours, endless sacrifices, and moments of pure doubt. But I poured my heart and soul into that business, and it quickly became a staple in our community. People would come from all over to taste my signature pastries and cakes. I loved seeing the smiles on their faces, hearing their stories, and being a part of their special moments. My bakery was more than just a business. It was my dream, my passion, my identity, and I was proud of what I had built, brick by brick, from scratch. But little did I know, my dream was about to be shattered by the person I trusted most, my husband. I woke up every morning at 4 a.m., the darkness outside a familiar companion as I began my day. The bakery was my world, and I was its devoted caretaker. I mixed and kneaded dough, the rhythmic motion a soothing balm for my soul. The sweet aroma of baking bread filled the air, a promise of the day's offerings. My team arrived, and together we worked in harmony, each step a well-practiced dance. We catered weddings, birthday parties, and corporate events. Every order was a chance to showcase our skills and dedication. I personally oversaw each event, ensuring every detail met my high standards. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and our bakery's reputation grew. I spent long hours perfecting recipes, experimenting with new flavors and techniques. My signature pastry, a delicate balance of sweet and savory, became a customer favorite. People came from all over to taste it, and I was proud to deliver. As the business grew, so did my responsibilities. I managed a team, ordered supplies, and balanced finances. The workload was crushing at times, but I refused to compromise on quality. My bakery was my dream, and I was determined to make it a success. I recall a particularly challenging order, a multi-tiered wedding cake with intricate designs. The client was specific about every detail, and I ensured it met her expectations. When the bride saw the cake, tears of joy filled her eyes. Moments like these made all the hard work worth it. My bakery became a staple in the community, a place where people gathered to share moments and make memories. I took pride in knowing I had created something special, a place where people felt welcome and cared for. The long hours and hard work were paying off, and I was exactly where I wanted to be. But behind the scenes, my husband, Kanak, was watching, his eyes fixed on the business's success. He would often offer suggestions, some of which I appreciated, but others seemed misguided. I brushed it off, thinking he was trying to help. Little did I know, he had other plans. Kanak would often accompany me to business events, his arm around my waist a familiar presence. He'd smile and laugh with my clients, and they'd remark on what a great couple we made. I'd think to myself, yes, we're a team. But behind closed doors, he'd question my decisions, his words laced with subtle doubt. "Are you sure you're doing this right?" he'd ask. Or, "Maybe you should let me handle this." I'd brush it off, thinking he was just trying to help. One evening, as we were closing up the bakery, Kanak offered to review the financials. I handed him the ledgers and he pored over them, his brow furrowed in concentration. I assumed he was just trying to be helpful, but looking back, I realized he was gathering information. He'd ask me questions about the business, and I'd answer, thinking he was genuinely interested. As time went on, I started to notice Kanak spending more time at the bakery, talking to the staff, and meeting with suppliers. I'd think nothing of it, assuming he was just being supportive. But in hindsight, I see that he was building relationships, gathering trust. He'd make comments about my management style, suggesting I was too controlling or that I should delegate more. I'd listen, thinking he had a point, but deep down, I knew what worked for my business. Canuck would often take phone calls in private, his voice hushed and serious. I'd wonder who it was, but I didn't think much of it. He'd say it was work or a friend, and I'd let it go. I trusted him, or so I thought. As the days turned into weeks, I started to notice small discrepancies in the financials, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what was wrong. Canuck would reassure me, "Don't worry, I've got this." And I did worry, but I trusted him. In the midst of all this, our relationship seemed normal. We'd go on dates, laugh together, and talk about our dreams. But beneath the surface, Canuck was plotting, his intentions hidden behind a mask of support and love. I was oblivious, blinded by my trust in him and my focus on the business. And that's exactly what he wanted. I was busy preparing for an upcoming food festival, my mind focused on perfecting our menu and presentation. Canuck was supposed to help me with the logistics, but I hadn't seen him all day. I assumed he was running errands or handling some business matters. Little did I know he was at the lawyer's office, finalizing a transfer of ownership that would change everything. Days passed, and I didn't think twice about the documents Canuck had been working on. He'd mentioned something about protecting our assets or streamlining our business. I trusted him completely, so I didn't ask questions. But on this particular day, I received a call from our accountant, her voice hesitant and worried. "Ayana, I need to talk to you about something," she said. "I've been going over the financials, and I noticed something unusual. It seems Canuck has transferred the business into his name alone." My mind went blank. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. "It looks like he did it a few days ago," she replied. "I'm not sure what's going on, but I thought you should know." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't breathe. I asked her to send me the documents, and as I reviewed them, my world crumbled. Canuck had indeed transferred the business into his name, without my knowledge or consent. I was no longer the owner of the bakery I had built from scratch. I tried calling Canuck, but he wasn't answering his phone. I sent him messages, demanding to know what was going on, but he remained silent. I was left with a sense of betrayal and confusion. What was he planning to do with my business? And why had he done this without talking to me? As the reality set in, I realized I had to act fast. I couldn't just sit back and let Canuck take control of everything I had worked for. I started making calls, reaching out to my lawyer and other advisors, trying to understand my options. But the more I dug, the more I realized the extent of Canuck's plan. He had been preparing this for a long time, and I had no idea what was coming next. The phone rang, and it was Canuck. "Hey, I saw you tried to reach me," he said casually. "What's up?" "What's up?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You know exactly what's up. You've taken my business. What are you planning to do with it?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Let's talk about this in person," he said finally. "I'll be home soon." I knew I had to be prepared. I couldn't let Canuck dictate what happened to my business without a fight. But as I waited for him to come home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in for the fight of my life. I sat in stunned silence, staring at the documents in front of me. The words blurred together on the page, but one phrase stood out. Transfer of ownership to Canuck. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, my breath knocked out of me. How could he do this? I thought we were partners, in business and in life. I tried to process what this meant for my business, for my future. Was I supposed to just hand over the keys to the bakery? The thought made my stomach turn. I had poured my heart and soul into that place, and now it was gone, taken from me without my consent. I thought back to all the times Canuck had offered to help, to all the times I'd trusted him. It was all a lie. He'd been playing me the whole time, using me and my business for his own gain. I felt like a fool, blinded by my love and trust for him. I couldn't sit still, so I got up and started pacing around the room. What was I going to do? I couldn't just accept this. I had to fight back, to reclaim what was mine. But where do I even start? The lawyer's words echoed in my mind. You have options, but it's going to be a fight. I stopped pacing and looked around the room, taking in all the memories I'd made here. This was my home, my sanctuary. And now it was being taken away from me. I felt a surge of determination. I would not go down without a fight. I would do whatever it took to get my business back. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone, dialing my lawyer's number. I need to start fighting, I said, my voice firm. I need to get my business back. My lawyer listened, offering words of encouragement and advice. We'll get through this, she said. We'll fight for what's yours. I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of resolve. I would not let Canuck win. I would fight for my business, for my future. I would not let him take everything I'd worked for. I started making a plan, thinking about my next steps. I would gather evidence, build a case, and take him to court if necessary. As I sat down at my desk, I noticed a photo of Canuck and me. We were smiling, happy. But now, I saw it for what it was, a facade, a mask he wore to hide his true intentions. I ripped the photo in half, tossing it in the trash. It was time to face reality. Time to fight back. I would not be silenced or defeated. I would rise up and take back what was mine. I started by reviewing all the financial documents, looking for any discrepancies or suspicious transactions. I spent hours poring over bank statements, invoices, and receipts, trying to make sense of it all. I noticed that Canuck had been making large transfers to a new account, one that I didn't recognize. I made a note of the account number and decided to investigate further. Next, I started digging into Canuck's computer, searching for any emails or documents that might shed some light on what was going on. I found a folder labeled Business Plans and opened it, my heart racing as I scanned the contents. There were documents outlining a plan to take over the bakery, to rebrand it and run me out of the business. I felt a wave of anger wash over me as I realized the extent of Canuck's betrayal. I continued to dig, determined to gather as much evidence as possible. I found emails between Canuck and our accountant, discussing the transfer of ownership and how to keep it hidden from me. I printed out the emails and added them to my growing pile of evidence. As I investigated further, I discovered that Canuck had been secretly meeting with investors, discussing plans to expand the bakery and push me out of the business. I obtained recordings of these meetings, and the conversations were damning. Canuck was clearly manipulating everyone involved, using my business for his own gain. I also found a series of text messages between Canuck and one of our employees, a person I had trusted. They were discussing ways to sabotage the bakery, to make it look like I was failing so that Canuck could take over. I felt a deep sense of betrayal as I realized that people I trusted were working against me. I spent hours organizing my evidence, making sure I had a solid case against Canuck. I knew I would need to present this to a lawyer, to the court, and possibly even to the investors. I wanted to be prepared, to have every detail accounted for. As I finished gathering evidence, I felt a sense of determination. I was going to take Canuck down, to make him pay for what he had done. I was going to fight for my business, for my livelihood. I was not going to let him win. I took a deep breath and stood up, feeling a sense of resolve. I was ready to take action, to confront Canuck and start the process of taking back what was mine. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was prepared to do whatever it took. I was ready to fight. I was going through some documents on Canuck's phone when I saw a message from someone named A. At first, I thought it was just a colleague or a client, but as I scrolled through the conversation, I realized it was something more. The messages were flirtatious and intimate, and I knew I had to find out who this person was. I searched the phone for more messages and found a series of conversations between Canuck and the accountant, Nana. They were discussing everything from business deals to their personal lives, and it was clear that they had a romantic relationship. I felt a wave of shock and anger as I realized that Canuck was having an affair with someone I knew, someone who was supposed to be helping me with my business. I couldn't believe that Canuck would do something like this, especially with someone who was working with us. I felt betrayed on multiple levels, and I knew I had to confront him about it. But first, I wanted to gather more evidence and understand the extent of their relationship. I started digging deeper, looking for more messages and emails between Canuck and Nana. I found a series of emails that outlined their affair, and it was clear that they had been seeing each other for a while. They had met at business events and had started a romantic relationship, using their positions to further their own interests. I also found some photos on Canuck's phone, photos of him and Nana together. They were smiling and happy, and it was clear that they were in love. I felt a surge of anger and hurt as I realized that Canuck had been lying to me, telling me that everything was fine while he was secretly having an affair. I knew I had to confront Canuck about this, but I wasn't sure how. I was torn between my anger and my hurt, and I didn't know what to do first. I decided to gather all the evidence I could and then confront him, to make sure that I had a clear understanding of what was going on. As I continued to gather evidence, I realized that Canuck and Nana's affair was just the tip of the iceberg. There were deeper issues at play, issues that went to the heart of our business and our relationship. I knew I had to be careful, to make sure that I didn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. I took a deep breath and started to think about my next move. I knew I had to be strategic, to make sure that I came out on top. I started to make a plan to confront Canuck and Nana, to take back control of my business and my life. I was determined to fight for what was mine, to make sure that Canuck and Nana didn't get away with their betrayal. I walked into the living room, where Canuck was sitting on the couch, watching TV. I stood in front of him, my arms crossed. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. Canuck looked up at me, a hint of concern on his face. "What's going on?" he asked. "You know exactly what's going on," I said. "I've seen the messages on your phone. I know about you and Nana." Canuck's expression changed, and he stood up. "That's none of your business," he said. "It's very much my business," I replied. "You're having an affair with someone who works with us, someone who's supposed to be helping me with my business." Canuck shrugged. "It's just a business relationship," he said. I laughed. "Don't lie to me," I said. "I've seen the emails, the messages. I know what's going on." Canuck's face turned red with anger. "You're just being paranoid," he said. "You don't trust me." "I don't trust you because you're not trustworthy," I said. "You've been lying to me, cheating on me. How can I trust you?" Canuck took a step closer to me. "You're just being dramatic," he said. "You're overreacting." I shook my head. "I'm not overreacting," I said. "I'm reacting exactly how I should. You're the one who's been lying and cheating." The argument escalated, with both of us shouting over each other. Canuck denied everything, said I was crazy and paranoid. But I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. "You're not going to deny what's going on?" I asked, my voice rising. Canuck smirked. "I'm not going to admit to something that's not true," he said. I pulled out the documents, the emails, and the messages. "Then explain this," I said. Canuck's face fell, and for a moment he was silent. Then he started to get defensive, saying that I was trying to trap him, that I was manipulating the situation. But I wasn't having it. "You're not going to turn this around on me," I said. "You're the one who's been lying and cheating. You're the one who's been betraying me." The argument continued, with neither of us backing down. But I knew I had the upper hand. I had the evidence, and I was going to use it to take Canuck down. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of documents in front of me. The evidence of Canac's betrayal was overwhelming. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, a never-ending cycle of shock and anger. How could he do this to me? How could he lie to me so convincingly? As I sifted through the documents, I realized that Canac's deceit went far beyond the affair with Nana. He had been secretly working against me, using his position to undermine my business and my reputation. I felt a wave of anger wash over me as I thought about all the times he had stood by my side, pretending to support me. I started to piece together the timeline of events, and it became clear that Canac had been planning this for a long time. He had been manipulating people, using them to further his own interests. I thought about all the people who had trusted him, who had believed in him. I felt a sense of responsibility, wondering if I could have stopped this somehow. The more I learned, the more I realized that Canac's betrayal was just the tip of the iceberg. There were others involved, people who had been working with him to bring me down. I felt a sense of determination, knowing that I had to take action. I couldn't let Canac and his accomplices get away with this. I started to make a plan, thinking about how I could expose Canac's deceit and take back control of my business. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to fight. I was ready to take on Canac and anyone else who stood in my way. As I sat there, surrounded by the evidence of Canac's betrayal, I knew that my world had been turned upside down. Nothing made sense anymore. But I was determined to make sense of it all, to find a way to move forward and rebuild. I was determined to take back what was mine, to fight for my business and my reputation. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of resolve wash over me. I was ready to face whatever came next, to take on the challenges that lay ahead. I was ready to fight for my future, to fight for what's rightfully mine. I sat in my office, surrounded by the evidence of Canac's betrayal. The documents, the emails, the messages. It was all there, black and white. I had spent hours poring over it, trying to make sense of it all. But now, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I started to make a plan to take down Canac and his accomplices. I would start by gathering more evidence, documenting every step of the way. I would talk to my lawyer, get advice on how to proceed. I would make sure that Canac paid for what he had done. As I worked on my plan, I felt a sense of determination. I was going to take back what was mine, no matter what it took. I was going to make sure that Canac regretted the day he ever crossed me. I started to make a list of all the people who had been affected by Canac's actions. There were the employees who had been manipulated, the business partners who had been lied to. I would make sure that they all knew the truth, that they all understood what kind of person Canac really was. I would also make sure that Canac's reputation was ruined. I would make sure that he couldn't work in this industry again, that he was shunned by his peers. I would make sure that he paid for what he had done. As I worked on my plan, I felt a sense of satisfaction. I was taking control, taking back what was mine. I was going to make sure that Canac knew that he had messed with the wrong person. I picked up the phone and dialed my lawyer's number. "I need to talk to you about Canac," I said. "I have evidence of his betrayal, and I want to know what my options are." My lawyer listened, asking questions and making notes. "We'll get started on this right away," she said. "We'll make sure that Canac pays for what he's done." I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of relief. I was taking action, and I was going to make sure that Canac regretted ever crossing me. I spent the rest of the day gathering more evidence, documenting every detail. I was meticulous, making sure that I had everything I needed. I was going to make sure that Canac couldn't deny anything, that he couldn't wriggle out of this. As the sun began to set, I sat back in my chair, feeling a sense of satisfaction. I had a plan, and I was going to see it through. I was going to take down Canac, and I was going to make sure that he paid for what he had done. I looked around my office, feeling a sense of determination. I was ready for this, ready to take on Canac and his accomplices. I was ready to fight for what was mine, to fight for my business and my reputation. Bring it on, I thought. Bring it on. I sat in front of my computer, fingers flying across the keyboard as I worked to gather intelligence on Canac's plans. I had been monitoring his emails, phone calls, and meetings, trying to stay one step ahead. My skills in business and investigation were coming in handy, and I was determined to use them to take Canac down. I started to notice a pattern in Canac's behavior, a pattern that I could exploit. He was meeting with investors, trying to secure funding for his new venture. I knew that if I could disrupt these meetings, sabotage his plans, I could stop him from moving forward. I picked up the phone and dialed a number, contacting one of my trusted allies in the business world. "I need your help," I said. "Canac is trying to secure funding for a new venture, and I need to stop him." My ally listened, asking questions and offering suggestions. "I can help you," she said. "I have connections with some of the investors he's meeting with. I can make sure they're aware of Canac's true intentions." I smiled, feeling a sense of satisfaction. This was going to work. I was going to take Canac down, and I was going to do it with style. I spent the rest of the day working on my plan, using my skills and resources to sabotage Canac's plans. I contacted other business owners, people who had been affected by Canac's actions, and asked for their help. Together, we came up with a plan to expose Canac's true intentions and bring him down. As the day drew to a close, I felt a sense of determination. I was going to make sure that Canac paid for what he had done. I was going to make sure that he couldn't hurt anyone else. I started to make phone calls, contacting the investors and letting them know about Canac's deceit. I also reached out to some of Canac's business partners, letting them know about his plans to betray them. I was spreading the word, making sure that everyone knew what kind of person Canac really was. As I worked, I felt a sense of satisfaction. I was taking control, taking back what was mine. I was going to make sure that Canac regretted the day he ever crossed me. The next day, I received a call from one of the investors. "We've been looking into Canac's background," he said. "We're not interested in doing business with him." I smiled, feeling a sense of triumph. It was working. My plan was working, and Canac was starting to fall apart. I continued to work on my plan, using every resource at my disposal to take Canac down. I was determined to make sure that he paid for what he had done, and I was going to do it with style. The days that followed the confrontation were tense and uncertain. Canac and I barely spoke, our interactions limited to discussions about the business. But I knew it was only a matter of time before things came to a head. One morning, I received a call from my lawyer. "The investors have pulled out of the deal," she said. "Canac's plan to take over the business has fallen apart." I felt a sense of satisfaction. My plan had worked. "What about Canac's position in the company?" I asked. "He's been removed from the board," my lawyer replied. "The other directors have voted to strip him of his executive powers." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Good," I said. "That's exactly what I wanted." But as the days went by, I realized that Canac's downfall came with a price. The business was suffering, and our employees were starting to get nervous. I knew I had to act fast to stabilize the company and reassure our staff. I called a meeting with the employees and explained the situation. "We're going through a tough time," I said, "but I'm committed to getting us through this. We'll work together to rebuild and move forward." The employees seemed to respond positively to my words, and I breathed a sigh of relief. But I knew I still had a long way to go. As for Canac, his future looked uncertain. He had lost his position in the company, and his reputation was in tatters. I knew he would try to fight back, but I was ready for him. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over. I was prepared to do whatever it took to protect my business and my reputation. And I knew Canac would stop at nothing to salvage what was left of his own reputation. The question was, what would happen next? Would Canuck try to sabotage the company from the outside, or would he try to make a comeback? I didn't know, but I was ready for whatever came next. I spent the next few days putting out fires and stabilizing the business. It was a challenge, but I was determined to succeed. And as I worked, I couldn't help but think about what the future held. Would I be able to rebuild the business and move on from this mess? Or would Canuck's actions haunt me forever? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. I would fight tooth and nail to protect what's mine, and I would not let Canuck win. The dust finally settled, and the outcome of the battle was clear. My business was safe, and Canuck's plans had been foiled. I had emerged victorious, but not without scars. I stood in my office, looking out over the city. The business was mine now, and I was determined to make it thrive. I had weathered the storm, and I was ready to move forward. The employees had rallied around me, and together we had overcome the challenges. The company was stable, and the future looked bright. I was proud of what we had accomplished. As for Canuck, he had slunk away, defeated. His reputation was in tatters, and he would never again be a threat to me or my business. I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that justice had been served. My personal life, however, was a different story. The stress of the past few months had taken its toll, and I knew I needed to take care of myself. I started to prioritize my own well-being, taking time for myself and focusing on my own needs. I realized that I didn't need Canuck in my life. I was strong enough to stand on my own, and I was better off without him. I was ready to start a new chapter, one where I was in control and happy. The future looked bright, and I was excited to see what it held. I was ready to take on new challenges and make the most of my newfound freedom. I was in charge of my own destiny, and I was determined to make it a good one. I walked out of the office, feeling a sense of closure and new beginnings. The past was behind me, and the future was full of possibilities. I was ready to take on whatever came next, knowing that I was strong enough to handle it. The city streets were bustling, but I felt a sense of peace. I knew that I had made the right decisions, and I was exactly where I was meant to be. I was in control of my own life, and I was ready to see what the future held. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool breeze on my face. I was ready to start anew, to build a life that was truly mine. And I knew that I would succeed. I look back on the events that transpired, and I realize that revenge consumed me. It drove me to take drastic measures, to plot and plan, to manipulate and deceive. But in the end, was it worth it? I think about the toll it took on me, on my business, on my relationships. I think about the damage that was done, the reputations that were tarnished, the trust that was broken. And I wonder, was it all worth it? Was revenge truly sweet? Or was it just a fleeting satisfaction, a momentary high followed by a lifetime of regret? I'm not sure I have an answer to that question. All I know is that I did what I thought I had to do, what I thought would protect me and my business. But in the end, it was a hollow victory. If there's one thing I'd say to anyone who's been betrayed, it's this: be careful what you wish for. Revenge might seem like the answer, but it's not always the solution. Sometimes it's better to let go, to move on, to focus on healing and rebuilding. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's easy. Betrayal cuts deep, and the desire for revenge can be overwhelming. But I've learned that it's not worth the cost. It's not worth the toll it takes on your mental and emotional health, on your relationships, on your business. So, if you're seeking revenge, take a step back and think about what you really want. Do you want to spend your time plotting and scheming, or do you want to focus on moving forward? Do you want to let the actions of others define you, or do you want to take control of your own life? The choice is yours. But for me, I've learned that revenge isn't the answer. What's important is to focus on what's truly important to me, to prioritize my own well-being, and to move forward with purpose and intention. This is the end of my story. Thank you for watching, and if you like this kind of content, kindly leave us a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thank you.